Everyone is a star child, made of stardust and the infinite potential of the universe. This extraordinary fearless something in each of us clamors for freedom from the bonds of fear, conformity, and an ordinary life. Welcome to Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot, where practical tools and solutions from the intersection of mind-body medicine, science, and spiritual well-being awaken and empower you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in the sweet spot. During the pandemic, many adults suffered from the isolation of being away from loved ones. And then, of course, also they experienced being ill or loved ones being ill, or just the loss of those loved ones. But it also seems that the young adults, the kids and the adolescents, seem to suffer even more so from being away from, their peers and their friends, the isolation, and being at home. Also, the online learning seemed to be particularly challenging for many of them. They fell behind both academically and socially. So joining me today to have this conversation is Hadiya, who is a 22-year-old recording artist, producer, mental health advocate, musician, and CEO of Dollhouse Entertainment Media and Publishing. She is a force to be reckoned with in the entertainment space. So welcome again, Hadiya, for joining us. And in addition, your artistry is also very in your beautiful, expressive writings. So again, thank you. Welcome and joining me, having the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
So let's talk about your journey. You're clearly very diverse in your artistry and very gifted, very talented. I've had the pleasure of hearing your beautiful voice, and the audience will as well during the show today. So how did you get started with that part of the journey?
So I've always been singing and creating, since a child. But for me, what really solidified the beginning of my journey was the release of my very first project entitled Nafia, named after my younger sister, Samira. And essentially, that was the first time that I was able to develop a real fan base from my music. And the best part about that time in my career was that the project was actually a school project that led me into kind of a transformative space where I was able to consider music as a career. So yeah, that was pretty much where it started, with that first project in high school.
So I can imagine it took some courage.
Yeah, of course, with the incentive of my family knowing that it was for grade, I received a lot of support putting it together, which I'm always grateful for because it changed my life.
So so, and again, I know I'm really kind of focused on this because I know as one of the things that I talk about is that we're all the infinite potential of the universe, that energy potential range to show up as us. So we're all have our own unique brilliance, but many of us, one, don't recognize that, and two, even though there's that something, that our own brilliance that calls to us, again, we lack the courage to follow that. So what was it about, your upbringing and the folks that poured into you that it helps you recognize that, and again, have the courage to pursue it?
Well, one thing I am definitely blessed to have grown up around was two parents that have a very knowledgeable skill set in public speaking and engaging audiences. And that was something that I was really able to attach to my own personal upbringing in terms of, developing, into my own self Um, and I've also been blessed to have, family that's always had an interest in fine arts and in, music. And yeah, I think one of the benefits of having the type of family that I did have growing up was that they were also entrepreneurs. So I was able to, explore a different side of employment besides, just kind of clocking in somewhere every day. And knowing that you can, make your own schedule and really make your own life whatever you truly want it to be. So I was blessed to have those types of things around me growing up.
So yeah, and definitely, of course, given who your dad is, which he of course has been a guest on my show a few times, Dr. Lamar Darnell Shields, who of course is an educator and is a motivational speaker, and very much a supporter of the performing arts. How has that your music artistry um, connected to you becoming a mental health advocate? Because that's unique. That's definitely unique.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been blessed to be a part of is a generation of people who aren't ashamed to include the hardships and struggles that they're facing, not only in their music, but in, in the way that they express their opinions online and through various forums. Um, and one thing I will say for me is the transition into making music that helped heal others into making music that helped heal me essentially was that the goal was to never stop making music that helped other people. But this time, I considered, how I could use it to help myself. And in the creation of my last project that I made, this was where that transition occurred, where I actually created a section of tracks that essentially chronicled my journey through the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the challenges I faced through isolation. Um, and, once I started to view music as a tool that could not only help others, but help myself, I was actually able to be, a beacon of light to other people in ways that I didn't even, necessarily expect.
So what? So you're 22 now. How old were you at the time of the pandemic?
So when the pandemic started, I was actually 18 years old, and it was my freshman year of college.
Mm.
And once I came home for the spring break, a lot changed, and a lot of the things that I thought I would be doing, everything completely, went how it decided to go, and it was very hard for me because as my first true year of adulthood, it was stunted essentially by the circumstances of the world,
You said it was stunted by what?
by the circumstances of the world at the time.
Okay, so can you elaborate on that some more? I mean, what was stunted? What was?
Yeah,
Because
so
I'm sure it felt like a loss. Just
yeah,
even the way you talk about it, I'm sure it felt like a loss. So what was stunted? What was lost?
for me, specifically, I was studying classical voice, which is a discipline that requires in person, independent lessons with various professors who, will instruct you on various things from voice lessons to piano to music theory. And essentially, the line of communication was so blurred because this was the first time in history really of modern of our modern history where you know educators had to find ways to still adequately teach their students.
Hmm.
It just wasn't sustainable. And one of the things that really was a huge loss for me was that what I went to school for and what I was initially passionate about, I wasn't able to really pursue that in the capacity that I expected due to the pandemic, which was one of the biggest losses for me at the time because I had so many plans to really excel in that program, and I felt like I was really unable to perform as well as I would have had I had been on campus.
Um, and again, this is just so I don't make any assumptions and taking things for granted. As a musical artist, what are you able to identify that again that you feel was less than optimal, that was really missing, that you were looking forward to, that you didn't get because now things are online, or you're having to talk to professors on the phone or other means of communication?
Yeah, I think one of the most challenging parts about that time was that essentially anyone who's went to college or any form of formal or higher education knows that one of the keys to success in an environment like that is to develop a relationship with various peers and with your professors. So without the opportunity to really break into that space, it was one of the biggest challenges for me, just because I felt like I didn't get a chance to really showcase my abilities in the way that I really truly could. Um, and it was unfortunate because people that you once admired, you're seeing that they aren't able to adequately instruct you, and that changes your whole perspective on what they're able to do to even support your career. So I had a lot of second thoughts about if it was even the right decision to be pursuing music in the first place.
You question pursuing music because of the lack of connection for relationships, or the lack of training, or that, or some other things, or
Well, essentially for me, I noticed that other peers who were involved in different disciplines outside of my own, whether it was engineering, nursing, anything in the STEM field, it seemed like those disciplines had a lot of an easier transition, and that was really hard for me, given that what I'm specifically passionate about seemed to be one of the most difficult things to make adjustments to. And I really wrestled with trying to find a new space to fit in that would still, allow me to be able to excel. And I think that was really, really what hurt the most. Just because it seemed like a lot of people were just waiting for our return back to school, and I felt like I was missing out on the proper instruction that I really, really needed to be, on
Mhm.
top of my game by the time he came back. So it really pushed me to completely change paths, and my college experience became less and less about music as the pandemic continued, which was really unfortunate for me at the time.
I'm sorry, you said it became less about music and became about what?
So essentially, I ended up switching majors to a discipline that would be more suitable and more sustainable to be able to have instruction online. So I ended up completely veering off from the music space at the collegiate level entirely.
Oh, okay. So what did you switch majors to?
So I actually switched to political science, specifically because I have always had an appreciation for social justice, which is something that I also grew up around. So it wasn't hard for me to transition. My like anyone else who has plans and expectations for their life, a lot of times you just want things to go the way that you think they should. And that switch to political science wasn't my favorite thing, but I ended up being able to find the light in that situation, which I couldn't be more grateful to have something else that I was at least interested in to pursue.
So what was the light that you found?
So for me, one of the things that I realized was that being in the political space as a young, black person holds a lot of impact in our society, and it always has. And one of the things that I was able to admire and learn more about than I ever had before was the role that youth play over time, and in the roles that you have played over time in social change and making social change possible across movements. Our power has always been strong, and our ability to come together was admirable, and it felt like I was able to be a part of real change, especially in an area that has been known for, racist violence against Black people, specifically where I went to university in Texas, in the southwestern region of the United States. So I was able to really see the importance of social justice in a space where it really, needs that attention, because there are just so many areas of the world that have, essentially been forgotten due to this kind of feeling that, racism is over due to whatever opportunities that we most humans have. Just being able to see that the work isn't done, it was inspiring to keep going and be a force of change.
And then I also thought about too, though, how, we may have an idea or an intention to move forward in a certain profession, or certain creating a certain kind of experience even around that profession, and how, life happens the way it happens.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
And while we don't get a say so over what happens, the choice that we have is to adapt, and not to be attached to whatever our vision was, because if that's not possible any longer because of the circumstances, the conditions, then how we have to be willing to let go of that vision in order to embrace the vision that life and the path seems to be taking us,
yeah,
and then be willing to adapt to those changes, and in a way that still, in a way I think that still brings forth, again, our infinite potential, our unique brilliance, in a way that we still find, as you said, that is true for us individually, and also serves the greater good.
right,
So I think, and knowing what I do know about your dad, the social justice aspect is very much a part of his work.
right,
And so to me, of course, it makes sense that while it might not be the vehicle which pursue, is the main vehicle you're driving, to me it makes sense that it's part of what you do. And um and I but I also think, and help me out, I could be, help me out with this. I think it's also meaningful for you as a young person, because you gives you an understanding of your own history, and an understanding of your history in this country, our history in this country, what that means for you. And then also, what does that say to you about how you move forward?
right, exactly. No, I honestly think that's a great point. And it's interesting how I somehow managed to leave out, you know, all of the experience that I do have in the social justice sphere with my parents. Um, But essentially, one thing that I did want to add was that I forgot to mention that as we were doing my introduction, that very first project, what made it sustainable enough to be a school project, but also to be an album, was that it was a social justice infused project. So the subject matter of each song encompassed, different, parts of our history, different, Black Panther party sound clips and different, excerpts, just to kind of include everything and make it an educational experience.
Hmm.
And that was definitely an avenue that I was in with my music for a really long time, essentially where I started. So the parallels of becoming a political science major and having that history of social justice through music, transitioning from a music major, essentially looking back, as upset and frustrating as it was, like you said, being able to still find things that connect to what I'm passionate about was really a blessing. And it wasn't easy for everybody during COVID to find their path as quickly as I kind of, made myself. I'm like, okay, we have to figure something out soon, because it seemed like the concept of time was changing for so many people. Our expectations in life, everything that we expect, was up in the air. And being able to adapt, I think, was the key way to adjust to that period in life, for sure. No, I was grateful to be able to essentially, be observant of the fact that everyone, across generations was experiencing, a real loss. Whether it was, the loss of loved ones or the loss of, potential career or the loss of a certain experience in life, like the, essential moments and formative years of high school and middle school. So many people were going through so many different things. And I think where we went wrong at the time was trying to decide which group of people in our society was at the most disadvantage. And I think once I essentially realized that, yeah, it may suck for college students to be going through this, there's so many people that are going through so much more. And I spent a lot of time telling myself that we had it, us undergrads had the worst, especially people who just arrived. Because I know a lot of people who weren't able to return back to school, and a lot of things were really real major changes for them.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, we were all, going through it, if you will, and community and adaptability and understanding were the main takeaways that I think kept anyone going, especially anyone who wanted to be a better person coming out of that experience, or improve in any ways of their life.
So let's take a break and then come back, and I want you to tell me more about that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be right back. Heaven Abounds in You takes you on an inward journey of discovery that dramatically transforms your outward experience of life. Discover the power of belief. Utilize it in connection with science to create a vision of meaning and purpose that pulls you forward. Let go of the meager me to discover the magnificent me. Let go of your painful past and live life free from fear, worry, and stagnation. Experience an abundant universe as you powerfully create happiness, relationships, health, and limitless opportunities. When you heal your mind, all things are possible. I'm Dr. Ballin A. Durr, the host of Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot. And today I have my guest joining me is yes, Hadiya. And Hadiya is a musical artist. She is also a music producer and the CEO of Dollhouse Publishing.
Dollhouse Entertainment, Media, and Publishing.
Thank you. Sorry that.
No worries. It's a pretty long name.
And actually, your performing name is Hadiya Dollhouse.
Yes.
Hadiya Doll, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so so we were talking about her musical journey as part of dealing with the isolation, and frankly, let's call it the isolation, the losses, and the disappointments that you experience as an 18-year-old at the beginning of COVID, and how that affected your not only your college experience, but also the training and education that you had envisioned, right, as a classically trained vocalist. So one of the things we were talking that I brought up right before we went to break was you mentioned during that time there was an issue of or a focus on what group was worse off and how you thought that was detrimental. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So essentially, I definitely had a moment where I felt like, us college students had the short end of the stick. Um, so yeah, man. Once the pity party went away, it definitely solved a lot of the issues occurring.
But I think, but to your point though, while developmentally you were not in the same place, it still was an important time in your development.
Right,
It's an important time in your, because it's an important time in your self discovery,
right,
right? About um, getting to know who you are and getting to know those things about you that had been hidden, and discovering gifts and discovering talents and discovering interest and exploring different options, and developing your passions for what may be your work for the next 5 or 10 years,
right.
because it might change after that. But so discovering those important things about you is really important. And then, of course, the relationships that you develop, which you mentioned already, the relationships that you develop both with professors, but both with other students. Some of those relationships can become lifelong relationships,
Right.
and how important they are to you, both professionally but also personally, in a social way. The fact, in terms of, because the fact of the matter is typically, who do we trust? It's people we know, not somebody. It's not somebody we don't know, and it's kind of like you know they kind of said, like, who are you? Do I know? I don't know you. Can I trust you? Can I work with you? So formulating those relationships and the self-discovery process that goes on in college, I think is valid and important. And so to me, it makes sense that you would experience it as such a loss. So the thing that I wanted to go ahead and get into, though, too, was about the issues that you experience, the struggles, some of the mental health issues. I don't know, did you suffer with depression or anxiety? And then how your album became a way for you to to work through that, to heal that, to reveal, to talk about or sing about your healing journey.
Yeah. So, kind of for me, the timeline of everything that really occurred, pre-pandemic and during and post. Um, Essentially, I experienced a loss around October. A very close friend of mine, boyfriend of my senior year of high school, had actually passed away in that fall semester. So I was kind of already dealing with that, and you know, I wasn't really too open about it, just because we were already experiencing a personal loss in our family of my great grandmother at the same time. So, the way that I viewed it was, I essentially viewed it as going through that loss alone, really just to be more selfless and considerate of, what we were already going through as a family. Um, and for me, the pandemic just kind of came and was right on top of what I was already dealing with. And essentially, once I came home, I was able to take that pain and loss and change and transform it into, a open and vulnerable space for me to create. And I actually have a predecessor to the MySpace project that I mentioned previously, that was actually called Isolation, which was my very first self-produced project,
Mhm.
where I essentially recorded everything on my own for the very first time. And I was really leaning in more onto this kind of self-sufficient way of creating, where I didn't necessarily have the resources like I did before the pandemic, where I was able to go to a recording studio, or meet up with friends and be creative and collaborate. Um, And so through that project, it was definitely trial and error for me. It definitely wasn't my best work, but for me, it was a way for me to kind of get everything off my chest,
Mm-hmm.
how I felt. And it was just 3 songs, and each song pretty much just encompassed like the excitement of arriving, to Texas for college. You know, a song called "Breathe," where it was actually a meditation song that I created for myself to help me deal with the depression and anxiety that I was facing. Um, and then I can't remember the name of the third song right now because at this point this was a few years back. And it's not on any major streaming platforms. It was just kind of for me to have. Um, but yeah, that was kind of the first step that I took to examine how music could help heal others because that was my first time creating a meditation song. And it was really eye-opening experience for me because it did a lot for me as well. And I listened to it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, the way that that transition was essentially, you know, the political climate, the social climate, um, everything that was going on in Texas at the time, um, it kind of caused me to not be able to return back to university right away once
Mm-hmm.
things had opened. So I actually ended up staying online and um, pursuing my degree still online, living off campus at a local college near in my hometown. Um, and that was just because I kind of at that point felt like I was really missing out, and I knew I wasn't going back to school when everyone else was going back. So I was like, let me just get a job and save up for an apartment, and what have you. And in that time, that was when I started the creation of MySpace, which was basically a successor to the isolation project that I had made. And I actually got the idea from a friend who, had a joke about me in college about how I was always like spaced out and like in my own world. And came up with the title MySpace,
Mm-hmm.
similar to the social media platform, but 2 words, my and space, to kind of emphasize that, I had really grown tremendously during that period of taking, real time in solitude. And, you know, the project became a way for me to share my story in a way that was palatable and marketable essentially because if like most people came out of COVID with an extra skill or two. And for me, it was my rebrand and rebuilding myself from the dark times that I've been in. Um, and you know, as challenging as those moments were, it wouldn't have I wouldn't have been able to be the person that I am today. I wouldn't have had the skill sets that I have today
Mm-hmm.
without that time. And I actually do know that looking back, had I had focused solely on classical music and opera, I wouldn't have given myself the chance to see what I could do on my own,
Mm-hmm.
creating and producing, and even as far as composition, to say it's okay to just have me sometimes. Um, and yeah, that time frame, though I've condensed it into a few moments, it was really 3, 4 years of real transformation. Um, Sort of like a butterfly effect where I really became, you know, a woman despite feeling like it wasn't possible due to everything that was going on.
So I'm sorry. Are you saying that you didn't feel it was possible to become a woman because of everything that was going on?
Well, I didn't feel like I would have the experiences that most women my age had. You know, even as far as just like dating. I mean, I know a lot of people came out of COVID with some real like social kind of like struggles when it comes to socializing and making friends. Um, just a kind of sidebar, there's been various studies made about people within my age range having issues socializing and making friends, as
You
well
were socializing with.
like forming relationships with peers because of that time where we college is where you really put yourself out there to meet new people.
Right. And that's exactly what I was saying early before when I
Yeah,
said that apart about while there's not the same developmental issue as a younger child when you're talking about college age, but there's a different aspect of relationships and how we relate to each other, how we
right,
connect with each other, how, if is, as you well know, is this a relation, the relation, some of the relationships you develop at that time are also, love relationships, right? And while they may not last your whole lifetime, they still can be very pivotal,
right,
as it were. So if again, you're not connecting with people in terms of, eyeball to eyeball, if I'm not able to read the signals I see from your body language and from, observing you and feeling your energy and you mine, and how do we navigate that? And if we have conflicts and
right.
so yeah, I thought that's what I was trying to convey earlier when we talked, when I brought that up, about it. It's really important socially.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I didn't expect that to be such a big takeaway from, you know, what a lot of us experience. Because I feel like it's something you don't really think about, especially before the pandemic. I don't think there was really enough conversation about the importance of those developmental years of learning how to socialize, because it essentially has an effect on the quality of life and your level of discernment in social situations. When you're not in a good space, when you're in a good space, when you're around the right people, when you're not,
Hmm.
and those type of challenges can foster moments that can alter the rest of your life.
Hmm.
And ultimately, excuse me, ultimately it becomes a quality of life and a safety concern for most people my age, especially young women. Um, and so, that portion of developmental, you know, deficiency, if you will, and also just personal growth. I think going hand in hand, a lot of us found our strengths and our weaknesses to be more apparent having that time, alone. Um, and yeah, I think the isolation really gave me an opportunity to be more mindful and aware of challenges that I've always had, but challenges that became amplified due to the current circumstances of the world. Um, I had always suffered, with different challenges, but it wasn't until then that I was able to, decide if I wanted to make a change or if I just wanted to dwell in it.
So what kind of challenges are we talking about?
For me, I definitely experienced a lot of anxiety and just kind of general loneliness, but also the depression from losing my boyfriend, his passing. Um, you know, just kind of feeling like because there was so much happening in the world, why should anyone care about what I have going on?
You said because there was so much happening. What now?
There was so much happening in the world. For me, it felt like why should anyone care? You know what I mean? I kind of felt like
Hmm.
why would this? What difference does this make from anyone else who's currently experiencing loss from the pandemic? Because this wasn't a pandemic death. This was a sudden, occurrence that was completely unrelated, but the timing was just so strange, um, and kind of difficult for me to wrap my head around at the time. It caused me a lot of pain, um, and for me, um, with the untimeliness of his death, it definitely changed my perspective on death as a whole, and kind of had me viewing it in a way where it wasn't as serious of a matter as it is, which translated into um, moments and thoughts and ideas of suicidal tendencies and things like that, which really just stemmed from me just kind of wanting to be with that person. We had already spent so much time apart with me going away for college. It was just kind of like now that I was back from school, And it seemed like nothing would ever be normal again. It was just kind of like, why not just end it? And I I was able to come out of that space fairly quickly with me moving out because essentially it was like, okay, I have to be strong for a lot more reasons than I was before. I have to get up to go to work. I have to be responsible. I have to make sure I go to class to make sure I pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I kind of viewed everything as like a machine, move fast, just figure out the next thing. But that doesn't take away from the time that I did spend, really grieving and trying to process my real first true loss outside of the loss of my great grandmother. Those were the first two, major losses that I had ever had in life. And so for all this to just be going on simultaneously, I really struggled with, you know, even finding the right people to talk to. I went through like so many different mental health professionals, and I had what I thought was the best fit for me, and she, the pandemic caused her to rethink her occupation, and she ended up leaving her practice, and so many things happened where I viewed self sufficiency as the main answer, um, and I was able to combine self sufficiency with mindfulness and
Mm-hmm.
be able to see, the brighter side of things. And once I was able to put that together, I think that's when I became, closer to the person that I am now, which is more whole than I've ever been, thankfully. Um, you know, Being able to perform again and be back interacting with people after the pandemic, and being able to reaffirm that my dreams were still attainable was another way that I really was able to get out of that dark side. And for me now, I guess today, standing here or sitting here, um, I can definitely say that everything that happened to me was was wasn't just happening to me. It was for me to be able to see um, that life happens, but it doesn't have to happen to you. You can just let things occur naturally and maneuver and shift and adapt. And I think I didn't realize that was what life was about until that time. Um, I definitely was. My judgment was clouded, and I was a little bit blinded by the perfect life and the perfect grades and getting into the perfect school. And once the real life came, it was like, okay, no, this is how it's really gonna go.
And
Um,
you know what? What one of the things I encourage people is to think of it like this: is even the things that are challenging and difficult, is that it's actually can be there to help you learn some skills and tools that you don't have, but that you're also going to need where you're going, and you're not even aware that you're going to need them.
right,
And so it's not always the most pleasant experience, um and but even in its difficulty, it can still um it can still be beneficial, right? How do you still grow and learn from those difficult challenges? I think the other thing too, though, in listening to you, that I think is also important is that instead of comparing ourselves to other people and saying my stuff doesn't matter, um again, you've kind of brought that up before about whose stuff is worse or who's worse off,
right,
but allowing for the fact that your experience, because it's your experience, is meaningful. Just because you matter, so it matters. Your experiences matter. And
right,
then giving yourself that level of compassion and also permission to, in terms of validating your experiences, and permission to process it in whatever way, obviously healthy way,
Right.
that you need to do it. So it's great that you and having those suicidal thoughts were able to come out of it
Yeah.
fairly well, and that you actually found somebody. I'm glad you did find somebody to help. But for those who are having those feelings, obviously we always want to encourage people is because I know one of the things when people feel suicidal, they sometimes they don't want to say anything because they're like, I don't want to get hospitalized. And
Right.
there's more to getting hospitalized when you're suicidal than just having the thoughts,
Right.
right? It's like, if and I'm using something entirely different to make the point, you know, uh, I may have the thought to punch the wall because I'm angry, but it's not the thought. It's not the thought that's going to hurt my fist or my arm.
Right.
What's going to hurt is if I punch the wall.
Right.
So it's just not the thought of having suicidal thoughts that's the issue, and that gets you admitted. There are other things that the person doing the assessment will have to evaluate to determine if if hospitalizing a person to keep them safe is going to be beneficial.
Right.
So we always want to encourage people that, if they're having suicidal thoughts, also, to seek help, right? And there's the National Suicide hotline, or the crisis hotline, is 988 now. So it's a very simple number to call if somebody is having, those kind of thoughts, or having, just in a crisis and want help or support and direction to how to find somebody to help you. So the other thing I wanted to go ahead and to is there is one of your songs that we were gonna one of the videos that we were gonna show. If you could, tell us about that before we air it.
Yeah. So this excerpt of a performance that we're going to show today is actually from my National Public Radio Tiny Desk submission for this year's contest. And essentially, the song is from my most recent project called MySpace. And the song is called Moon. And one of the main
I'm sorry, the song is called what?
Moon. Moon.
Mood.
Moon, like the moon in the solar system.
Moon. Okay.
So, as you all may or may not know, each song on the album is named after a planet in the solar system. And
Named after.
it's each song. Each song is named after like each planet in the solar system in order.
Ah.
Um, so this song in particular is about self-discovery, and also, kind of what we already discussed about, not necessarily comparing yourself to others and focusing on your own personal journey. And this is one of the most positive songs that came out of the creation of this project, because it was kind of like right when I was starting to see, kind of the light and the other side of things when it came to, my personal struggles. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
So, and then also tell us a little bit, what's the Tiny Desk Project, NPR's Tiny Desk Project?
Oh, so National Public Radio, or NPR, they do a contest every year where bands and singers and instrumentalists can submit a video of them performing an original song in front of a desk of any kind, and record a video in the most creative way that they can in order to be featured on their YouTube channel as a featured artist for their Tiny Desk platform, which is I want to say it's monthly series that they do where they bring major recording artists from Grammy Award winning to A-list, celebrity artists, and they come and perform in the office in front of someone's actual desk. So it's a historic backdrop that they've created, and it's been a long-lasting image for years, and grown extremely popular over the last 5 to 10 years or so. In submitting for the contest, my plan is to hopefully win and be selected. So you guys can find this video on their website with the rest of their contest entries. And there should be a space to vote soon, but it's not available just yet.
Okay. So again, we're going to see and hear Moon from Hadiya's, I say album,
Yes.
or from her album, MySpace.
This one is called Moon. Yeah, I had to find a piece of mine. Saying I had to take back what was mine. Sometimes you gotta reach deep down inside, and you'll realize you gotta heal your inner child. Yeah, I said, Houston, we have a problem. Say I'm not a regular one. Oh, I don't do this for fun. You know I was chosen. Put your life in the air right now. Yeah, and I can take it to the moon. I can take it to the moon. Some people worry about the other stars and how they shine. But I can take it to the moon. No need to worry about the other planets in your orbit. But I can take it to the moon. Yeah. Put your life in the air right now, like a galaxy. When I see big crowds, they notice me, 'cause I sing real loud as I wind my waist. I go head down, in minds we gon' rock that crowd. Yeah, and we sing real loud. Me and minds, we don't have no doubts. Oh, some people worry about the other stars and how they shining. But I can take it to the moon. No need to worry about the other planets in your orbit. But I can take it to the moon. Yeah, I said put your light in the air right now, like a galaxy. When I see big clouds and they notice me, 'cause I sing real loud as a hey, I go up and down. Me and mine, we gon' rock that crowd. And we sing real loud. Me and mine, we don't have no doubts. I can take it to the moon. Say I can take it to the moon, the moon. I can take it to the moon. And I can take it to the moon, the moon. I can take it till, I can take it till the moon, the moon.
So that was Hadiya's Moon from her album MySpace. And that's, I would say that's definitely my kind of groove, Hadiya. That's definitely my kind of groove. And the thing about your voice is it's beautiful, it's rich, it has a maturity to it that I wouldn't expect from someone so young, from someone 22 years old. But yeah, and then obviously lyrically, what you're expressing, it is deep and thought provoking as well. Yes. So, how can people find you? How can people find the album? Do you got any dates, or performances coming up?
Yeah, so you can find my album on all streaming platforms. If you go to my Instagram, HADIYADOLL, you'll find various links in my Instagram bio to all of my music. And depending on what platform you use, there's buttons for each program. So if you're a Spotify user, you can click MySpace Spotify. If you're an Apple Music, iTunes user, you can click MySpace Apple Music /iTunes. And for the rest of my music, you can just scroll down and you'll see a timeline of everything I've been doing since the start. So That's where you can find me. And don't let me forget, the episode may not be out before voting is over, but my band and I were selected to perform at this year's Farmers Ball in Kansas. So voting for that will be over on the 24th, and we'll find out if we made the festival or not. So, yep, I think that's April 26th, the festival. So stay tuned for updates on our first Midwest festival.
And congratulations. And we will definitely stay tuned. I certainly want to encourage folks to, to check you out on Spotify and iTunes, Apple iTunes, and obviously to check you out when you're performing. I've had the gift and blessing of being able to hear you in person, and you were singing a cappella, so just beautifully. You were singing a cappella, so folks, when they sing a cappella, they can sing. They can sing. That's Hadiya. She can sing, y'all.
No radio for me to hide behind that night.
Correct. Right. And no band.
Right.
And no band. So
right.
Yeah. So I thank you so much for joining me today to share your story and your and being so vulnerable to share your story and your healing journey and in your musical gift and talents with me and my audience today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor and a pleasure to be here, and I hope to be back soon.
Yeah, let us know, if you've got something new or something else that's coming out and you won't come back on, just, obviously give me a shout, let me know.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. So Hadiya, like many of us, we've had our struggles and challenges, with life. Sometimes depression and anxiety, the social isolation, the delays in forming, relationships, and our own personal development from those relationships, our professional development from those relationships, and just again those kind of personal and professional losses from the isolation that occurred due to COVID and the pandemic. So the idea, though, is whatever challenges or struggles or difficulties you're having, if you don't have the tools and the skills to use those tools in a way that help you, we want to encourage you to please, to reach out and seek professional help. If you're at a point of being in crisis and really need to speak with someone right away, call the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline number at 988. And be sure to be kind, compassionate, loving of you, to take care of you, because you matter. Your gifts and talents matter to us, the whole collective. I'm your host, Dr. Valen A. Durr, awakening and empowering you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in a sweet spot. See you next week. Thank you for joining us today in the sweet spot. Share, follow, and like us on social media. To learn more, please visit valenadurmd.com, spelled BALINADURRMD.com. Join us next week, and remember, when you heal your mind, all things are possible.